Welcome to The Next Decision, the show about the choices revenue leaders make when markets shift, growth gets challenging, and the old playbooks don't work as well as they used to. I'm Mike Sweeney, president of Decision Council. Today I'm joined by Adam Morgan, VP of Brand at Twilio. And Adam has spent his career working at the intersection of creativity and strategy and business impact. He's led brand and creative work inside major tech companies. He's also the author of Sorry Spock, Emotions Drive Business. And it's the book that makes a very compelling argument that emotion is not the enemy of business performance, but rather, in a lot of ways, emotion is one of the reasons business performance actually happens. And to me, that seems especially timely. So today I want to talk to you, Adam, about a big topic that growth leaders are grappling with. What role should brand, creativity, and emotion play in a world that's increasingly driven by data, by AI, by performance at all costs? So, Adam, welcome to The Next Decision.
So excited to be here. Thank you for having me. This is great. Yeah, let's dig into this.
Excellent. I'm really glad to have you here. I've been looking forward to this conversation. We were talking a little bit ahead of the show. I think you sit in a pretty rare seat. I feel like you understand creative work deeply, but you also understand the pressure that a lot of modern B2B revenue leaders are kind of, that they're under today to connect work to growth, to be able to demonstrate to a prying eyes CFO that revenue and business outcomes can be driven by brand. So before we even dive into all that, I'd love to know a little bit about your path. Like what got you here to today? You were in creative leadership and brand strategy, and now you're leading brand at Twilio. How'd you get here? And what's your view of brand and how maybe it's changed over time?
All right, I will do my best to get to all of those questions. But yes, it's been quite a journey, and that's interesting. You put it as like a unique space. I feel like there's a lot of us that live there, but maybe how do I even explain it? I've always been one that's been more of a central brainer how I've explained it. In that, yes, I've gone all in on the creative stuff, but I've also been very analytical in figuring out, well, how does all the other side of the house live? In fact, I even went and got a master's degree in marketing strategy just so I could speak, strategy better with a lot of business executives. And you talked about the book. The book was a huge part of my journey of like, how do I prove to a CFO that creativity really is better for the bottom line? Because traditionally, they just do not care about that for anything. But anyhow, a quick breeze through my past. So I started out in ad agency world, and I did that for almost 2 decades, 19 years. Big international ad agencies, small boutique ones. I ran the gamut for a long, long time, and creating any and everything in so many categories, even like creating, I think for like 3 seasons of a reality show, all the way down to billboards and TV spots and all that great stuff that you're just into advertising all about. And that was my life, and I loved it, and I was like hardcore into the ad scene. And then I kind of hit, after 2 decades, I just kind of hit this wall where I was like, all right, I'm kind of at the end of the chain sometimes in not being able to make decisions about where things should go, because it was like, clients would come and they'd want something and I'd go do it. So I kind of had this idea of jumping over to the other side, even though I was taught since 1995 that going to the client side is like selling out creatively, which is not true in the least. So I started working with some startups, and then eventually jumped over to the brand side at Adobe. And that was an interesting journey, but once I went over, I was like, why was I not doing this for a long time? Like, it was just such a great experience. And I was there at Adobe for 9 years, and then I kind of worked my way into the brand portion of Adobe, working with a handful of folks on the brand side. And then I left and went to Splunk, and my job there was to transform that brand, which was an awesome journey. We definitely did that and figured out the core of it and recreated it. And then they were bought out by Cisco, and I jumped over to Cisco and had the choice of, do I help with the Cisco brand or do I go somewhere else? And that's when Twilio came along. And so I went to Twilio, and now it's been a year and a half since some change, and it has been like such an amazing place and such an amazing journey. And at Twilio, my role of like bringing together multiple sub brands and acquisitions and just kind of reigniting this builder ethos and story and North Star and then wrapping everything else around it has been a freaking phenomenal experience, like career highlight for me. I absolutely love it. And so, yeah, that's kind of been my shtick has been like taking the creative world, marrying it with, data and analytics and understanding the other half of it, and then recreating brands that really thrive and move forward. So kind of like the brand fixer is kind of where I've been the last 10 years.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun remainder of the show. There's so many things that we could roll up on that, but follow up on that a little bit. You know, you talked a little bit about some of the changes, some of the differences, certainly some of the things that you've done at Twilio. But was there a moment, or was there a specific incident, let's say, for lack of a better term, where you kind of realized that creative work would need to be defended differently inside a business, particularly one that is kind of a modern growth oriented business like a tech company or a SaaS organization?
Absolutely. That moment happened. It was it was actually a 5 year journey. It happened over the ending of my agency life and into my Adobe life. And it really came down to this fundamental principle, which was I believed deeply that creativity was super impactful and super valuable. And I met so many different people who thought they were strategic and came at me with a logical point of view, just thinking that all creativity is fluffy. And when recessions happen and when times are hard, that let's get serious about performance and stop with the creative crap and let's just get down to brass tacks and make real business happen. And that always just didn't sit well with me. And so that's where it was a 5 year journey of researching and reading every book on the topic, interviewing people. And I went to my mentor at one point and said, there's not a book or anything out there that helps with this problem, but I've got a lot of research. And so I could definitely talk through it with someone. And that's when he grabbed me. He's like, Adam, you're going to write the book. I'm like, why me? I'm not going to write this book. But I ended up doing it and then getting it published. And it really was quite a journey of like, how do you take the subjectivity of creativity and take it to an audience that's very linear and logical and prove to them that no, this creative stuff, these emotions really are the unlock for better business and more money. And the way I had to do it though was I couldn't just say, like in the past, what so many people had done is like go and say, oh, look at all these award-winning ads. Therefore, if they're award-winning, then they're going to improve the bottom line. Or let's just look at post-sales or whatever it is. I instead went and interviewed neuroscientists and researched hard science studies and said, how can I take pure logic, like irrefutable science, and use that to prove that creativity, this soft thing, is actually super valuable. And so that's what that journey was just like going to him and saying, enough, I'm sick of fighting this. Like even maybe I shouldn't say this, we'll have to see, but even in a company like Adobe that was super creative and known for creativity, I still battled every day with people pushing back on why do we need creativity? Let's just do this quick demand generation ad and just call it a day and it'll work, right? And so it's so infuriating to me to be like, why wouldn't you choose the emotional creative answer when it will boost it even better than what your performance marketing will do just by, going down that path? So where the big aha moment happened for me. And then in writing the book and proving it out, there have been so many great moments of just using all that as ammo when I talk with folks. And when they get it, they're like, we're not fighting. It's not logic versus emotion. Like there's an interesting unlock of how they're like kissing cousins and we just need to embrace both of them.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because a lot of maybe I shouldn't say this. A lot of folks I do feel like still see brand as the layer that kind of comes after the strategy, after the copy, or after the design, even the campaign. And
Mhm.
what I hear you saying is, that the brand is much more connected to the operating system of a company, and so there's a question that forms in my head then a little bit around using the brand or expressing the brand. And I think that's an important distinction because if you have a business who's actually using the brand, like they're using it for financial gain, for revenue impact, versus well, marketing brought the brand to life through a thing. How do you know that? In a maybe, and I'd love to hear you correct me on that. How am I if I'm even articulating that idea where the business is using brand and creativity as a business driver versus just expressing the brand through marketing? How do you know, or is there a difference? It feels like there is one there, but I don't want to lead the witness.
Yeah, I fundamentally let's even back up further because it's not just saying, okay, the brand has impact in the promotional advertising moment of reaching an audience versus let's say like in our product or in our actual like product experiences. Backing up even before that, I would be willing to say if you look at business strategy, so there's the classic book, the three types of business strategy. Be like, I think it's like Wiersma, whatever. There's like three names that wrote that classic book, and the three strategies are you like a customer centric company, an operational excellence company, or a product centric company. And when you look at all three of those, the reality is two of them benefit greatly from creativity and branding, and one of them does not. So I would first say, what type of business are you, right? If your whole model is it's an operational business that it's all about just margins and cutting things down and people don't care about the investment, it's just a matter of getting a better deal. A bad example would be like Walmart. Like that's not true. They're not 100% operational because there is some branding element to it. But if it was like, or let's say you run a business that's just like selling secondhand like trailers to businesses, and all they care about is getting that trailer for a cheaper price, and it's just a matter of scale and mass, whatever. Maybe you don't need creativity. Maybe you don't need brand because that's not going to help you stand out or differentiate. It's just a matter of numbers. But on the other two, if you're truly trying to create a better experience, like you're a bike shop custom fitting bikes to people, or you're like Adobe creating products that are going to be, used in different ways, then absolutely, then I would say those two business strategies 100% require branding and emotion. Especially the more expensive the product is. We can get to that. Like the more complicated and expensive the product, the more brand plays a role. If you're talking like a simple product like a fork and it's just a matter of what color, whatever, then it becomes more operational. I also want to go back to what you said is like strategy. Like as you really dig into, here's my experience in my career over 30 years. People often want to put like logic and strategy in one camp and creativity in another camp. And to me, they're two sides of the same coin. Like when I'm looking at strategy and I probably need to differentiate like visionary strategy versus operational strategy. If it's operational, it's a matter of like moving the pawns around the board to get the most action. Fair enough. Like maybe that's more logical. But I would say for me, when I've had tackled projects that are truly strategic, if you stop and think about it, it's really looking at that business problem from different angles. It's trying to find a new way of making an association with a customer where they think about it, positioning in your mind. All of that stuff is still almost a creative act in my mind. You're making leaps, human leaps, to try and tie two disparate things together in a unique way that is attractive to humans, which is exactly what creativity is. You're just bringing together stories or elements in an attractive way to make it look fresh and exciting and make people think about something in a different way. So for me, and it's the same as like when I did all the research with neuroscientists around logic and emotion. Logic and emotion really are the same things inside the brain. All it is that logic is your prefrontal cortex making specific decisions about something, and emotion is a quicker way of bringing back a ton of logic and decisions you've made in the past in a quick emotion. But at the base core of it, they're retrieving and getting the same information. So anyhow, the way I see the world is like it's not a fight of one versus the other. Strategy is creativity, logic is emotion. It's just a matter of like when and where you deploy it and how much concentrated it is versus in the experience. That was way too deep, and I'd have to go off
No,
on a lot of
I
studies
love
to give
it.
you context on that. But
Well, and so let's keep going along those lines. You wrote Sorry Spock, Emotions Drive Business. Well, I should say it was published in 2019. So you were probably working on that, what, a year or so at
7 years before
ahead
that.
of. Okay, so even to the point, well before this kind of AI wave has reshaped kind of everything that we know, especially around speed and scale and content creation. So in some ways, the book and the arguments that you have made and you've been making today feels to me even more relevant than ever. Because if I can, just because I can produce something faster and particularly, I can version it, I can optimize it. I feel as though emotion and brand are playing an even larger role in differentiation. Because I still think that argument is one that B2B marketers need to hear. And by the way, I'm not knocking on pragmatism or making product claims and pragmatic arguments. They matter. Those stories do matter,
Mhm.
but that's not the whole story, and it should never be. So, why do we still have this conversation? Why is this still a thing? Like, why does so many B2B revenue leaders still underestimate that role? We've proven it out, and your research certainly is compelling. But why do you think we still have this argument that's going on today?
Well, the short answer is because people have not been trained to understand it. Like if they're going through a business school, and that was half of my experiment of going back and getting a master's degree in marketing strategy at Northwestern, to be like, all right, what are they learning? They're not learning anything about creativity. They barely, like, there's one class on a creative brief. Like, just business leaders, if they go through business school, are not learning about the nuance of of the power of creativity. They're just training their brains more and more to just look at numbers and operations and
Is it
those
because
types of
it's
things.
easier to defend? It's easier to
Yeah, yeah.
defend if they with
Well,
that
it's
because yeah,
I don't even know if it's easier to defend. Like, it's literally, those are important things in business. I am not, going to go out and say, hey, just go out there and be, a hippie with your business and just kind of chill and
right.
yeah, whatever. No,
Everybody's
that's
got a
not how it
number.
goes. You need
Yeah.
logic. You need numbers, but they're just not trained in it. Whereas like me in my career, 30 years of training my brain to understand the nuances of emotional experiences and what people resonate with and why they resonate with it and what triggers are going to get them there, right? Like it's just a matter of training your brain. So I think that's the number one problem is they're just not trained on it. And it's totally fine. And I get hundreds of creatives coming to me all the time. How do I convince my CEO, that this is an important thing? That's why I wrote the book. It's just you have to take your time to train them on why there's importance here.
Yeah, well, those decisions that folks are making, right? There has to be a rational element to it. I understand that. Those decisions shape a company's month, quarter, year, or in
Mhm.
some cases future. And pinned to that then are those roles, or pardon me, those careers that are pegged to that decision that they've made to put their trust in your solution. I understand why it's like, well, I've got my ROI calculator here, and I'm going to have payback in 6 to 12. Okay, that makes all the sense in the world. And on the other hand, trying to create an emotional decision that's pegged to my career, I understand the trepidation, even though I know that but both sides of my brain are working hopefully together to make the best decision. But I get it. But and they are important decisions, but there is more to it than just huddling around a spreadsheet trying to make your decision.
It is. And they're used to the playbooks of like, all right, I go through business school, and if I want to improve the bottom line, here are the levers that I pull on, right? And it's operational costs, and it's, expansion, and it's reinvestment, it's all those kinds of things. What's not a part of it is going to masterclass and seeing how Liquid Death started a company with absolutely the same product as the competitors. Like this was the experiment, the exact same product, sparkling water. There was nothing special about it at all. And all they changed was let's make an emotional experience. And who's freaking killing it right now? Liquid Death, not all the
Such a
other
great
water
example.
companies.
Such
So
a great example.
add that
Yeah.
to your business acumen, and then maybe you'll be like, oh, there's something here, right? Like I'm sure that my CEO right now at Twilio, just seeing how much the brand has affected our business in the last year, like that's got to be a positive impact to him of being like, oh, I can see the lift. I can see the value. Like I can see the energy. I can see how it's come alive and it's affected analysts and customers and so many others. And that's a good experience for him. So later on, when someone comes to him and said, hey, let's go all in on brand, he would be more open to being like, yeah, that worked. I know I can see the value of it. But most business leaders don't know that value because they haven't been exposed to it. So I would just say, like, it's on me, it's on you, it's on us to go out there and say, here's why emotional experiences. Let me back up a little bit. Performance marketing was all the rage over the last 10 years. We got
Yeah.
all these great measurement tools. It came in as like, here's how we're going to prove to you, the value of this lead and how it's going to run through the funnel, and everything's great. But when you stop and think about performance marketing, it is squeezing more juice out of your orange. Brand marketing, it is giving you more oranges, right? That's really what it is. And I think people get stuck thinking the only answer is performance marketing because I'm going to squeeze more and more out of that. But eventually you run out of juice. You have to get more and more oranges. And so today, I'm going to go back to your other comment of AI and why it's affecting so much of this. When making that creative stuff was super hard, it was easier to say, like, when we've got something, let's squeeze it. Let's performance market it. AI has changed the playing field now because production is so much easier and faster. Anyone can get in there and they don't have to spend a ton of money, and they can get, not perfect, let's just talk to like 80, 90% there of an experience that looks, smells, and tastes like a great brand experience. But the problem is because it's very derivative. Like, the heart of great branding and creativity and emotion is, if you go back to the Bernbackian philosophy, it's like, it's got to be fresh and unique and different, and that's what lights up the human brain. It's not just that it's colorful or something, right? It's got to be unique and special. So as AI has leveled the playing field, and this happened like 5-8 years ago with design systems for websites, where everyone's design system, they wanted to be human and approachable and intuitive. And then what happened is everyone's design system looked like the exact same thing. And suddenly all the websites were clean and white and nothing else going. And it was like vanilla. And now everyone's doing all this AI slop because it's just taking all the derivative stuff, and everyone can do anything, and it's vanilla again. So how do you stand out? The way you're standing out today, and thank you AI, because it's making brand way more important, is to have that unique story, that human emotional connection, to have that ability to show how you're special and you connect with customers in a unique way. Like, you get them to have loyalty. You don't get that from performance marketing. That's the logic. Again, remember going back to where I said, logic is making a short-term decision, and creative is all your past decisions rolled up into one emotional little feeling. That's what we're dealing with right now. Like, branding is all that emotions, where we're trying to get at nostalgia, what you care about. That's where branding is shining right now, because AI took away all the other stuff, so we've got to differentiate. And the most important thing that's not going away are going to be human experiences, are going to be, even in-person experiences are more and more. It's all of those moments that you emotionally connect with a brand. I'm going to cite one more thing. There was a book called The Advertised Mind by Eric Duplessis years ago. And they went out and studied all sorts of, like, thousands and thousands of ads and tested people against it to see, like, what people were caring about. And you could think, oh, the most important things were, like, stating a logical claim, or it's the number of exposures, so media wins, or it's how long things were, or the context of where they were put. All of that didn't matter. Like, in his study, the thing that mattered, like, exponentially above all of those other things, it came down to one thing: likability, which is fascinating. If it's likability, all those other things become vanilla. Again, that's what we're dealing with right now is, do people like the brand? Do people like the company? You're not going to squeeze more performance if they're just neutral about you. But if you get more likability, you get more brand loyalty, then you're going to squeeze a lot more juice out of that. So it really comes down to that. As brand marketers, and it's becoming more and more important in B2B, people keep thinking, oh, B2B is just all about these funnels and performance, and you get through a little thing. But at the end of the day, we're all human. And even though there is a big buying committee, it still matters. Like, everyone on that buying committee, have they heard of the brand? Do they have even a small emotional connection to it? Do they have likability? Are they connected to it? And if that's the case, you have a greater chance of success and bigger deals, all based on that differentiation and likability. So that's where I see things going. And I see big companies like ServiceNow. You talk to Colin Fleming, or you talk to us, like, we're seeing the pendulum go away from performance marketing that was like 80% and 20% in brand and spend. I know that's been my world the last 20 years. We're trying to move that more and more towards 50-50, where it's like, it's still logic and performance are important. Business decisions are important. But why wouldn't you bring in that loyalty? Why wouldn't you bring in that emotion? Think of all your favorite brands, your favorite things. Like when you stop and think about it, you're like, yeah, it's the things that I have heart to that I'm going to invest in and I'm going to care about. So getting that more to more of a 50 has really been my charge of how do we get there and start educating more CEOs and CFOs to understand that true value so that they get it and we put the right value in it.
Yeah, so interesting because I feel as if brand is. I mean, I think we've made this point, and we're going to continue to hammer it that brand creativity differentiation more important really than ever. And as AI has entered the chat, if you will, I can do it faster and I can do more of it. And it leads to exactly what you were saying, which was, we're also going to see more same as the website example is a great one. Um, it's funny, I've had a conversation now with 2, brand leaders in the span of about 2 days, one my client yesterday and now today talking with you a little bit, and the gentleman I was speaking with yesterday reminded me that, that AI is kind of engineered by its very being to sort of aim for the middle,
Hmm.
and as a result, you're just by default going to see that sea of sameness and more of that, more averageness, in the content, and you're absolutely right. If given the opportunity that we all are as marketers, why wouldn't you? And even if you pull it back to like say the pragmatic or the practical for a moment, um, if I'm a CMO or CRO, maybe a head of demand or ABM, whatever it might be, and I'm trying to connect brand to demand, and the last thing that I want to do is reduce it to a lead gen tactic. Is there something in your mind? I know I've got a few, but is something in your mind that you would advise them if they were listening today and you were talking to a CRO, CMO? Here's what I would do differently to help better connect that brand to what do you tell them when you have those? I bet you have those
Yeah,
conversations all the time.
absolutely. And here's what I want to be cautious of right now. I am not anti AI. Creativity is not anti AI. Yes, there is a push for speed. And I think right now the dialogue is every CEO on X is reading the same doomsday articles and getting all spun up that it's a performance or it's just a performance thing. Like I buy AI, I cut back my staff, I make money,
I
right?
reduce my head count. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's further from the truth. I see it as a scale. There are moments where AI is going to make it better, faster, cheaper, 100%. If I'm doing a big video and I need a background of a castle, I'm not going to go to London and go shoot that scene behind a castle. I'll shoot the people in the studio and then drop the background. Like I'm going to be practical with AI of the uses of it. So there will be many use cases where AI is going to be the solution. But if that's your only solution, that's where you're going wrong. The full scale of things, there are bits of content that in order to differentiate your brand need to be AI resilient, let's say, where I need to create bespoke moments that bring out the emotion and the experience for my customers in a big way. So if I'm talking to an ABM person, I would say, stop thinking of it as I'm doing a program, I need to either plug in creative or I need to plug in boring. Or instead, think of it in terms of this. Take all your creatives and the bespoke stuff, put that on the top. Instead of just doing a derivative ad campaign that looks corporate and like everyone else's, because you're just going to AI and say, give me a campaign for a CIO, mid-funnel with ads and social bits. Like, do the creative emotional work up top where your systems approach, your creatives are going to create, here is bespoke messaging and stories and creative that tell that nostalgic or emotional story. And then your ABM person can just go to that, do derivative stuff from that piece of work through AI and create a massive campaign and a bunch of outputs that they can therefore go and use for very specific moments for customers. So it's like find the right stories, find the right moments, use it as a scale. There will be bespoke moments and there will be AI fast moments, and just create your journey so you're using at the right time at the right place for that experience. So that we're not like limiting anything. That's how I see it. It's just the full enchilada. They can still be creative and emotional, but put your effort into it so that it's benefiting the whole company as a system rather than one-off campaigns or moments that are creative or not creative, if that makes sense.
It does, and that last part, it resonates with me every day working with our clients here at DC. So much of this comes down to understanding how decisions get made and realizing that there is no one path to purchase. I think is relevant in terms of how we bring these emotional plays and experiences to life for them. And as a result, organizations need to think about how they align around that as part of what they as part of or the leading part of what they bring to market. So got just a couple more questions for you, and we'll start to wrap it up if that's okay. And this has been
Mhm.
just a great conversation. Really appreciate you joining us today. But one of the things that we ask everybody on the show, it's called the next decision. So what we found is that growth doesn't come from some magical giant piece of transformation, or all in digital transformation or transformation this and that and the other, but it really comes from, honestly, better decisions, better strategic, better creative decisions that really resonate, that show that an organization understands its buyer. So for leaders that want to use brand and leverage brand to become a real growth driver at their org, what would you leave them with? What's the next decision that they need to make?
I think the most important thing that I can do as a brand leader, if I were to be working on whatever business it was, is to really think deeply about what the story is that you stand for, that your company stands for. And that's not to say what the product is, the main product. I'll give you an example. At Twilio, before we did any brand work, before we went off and did design, picked colors, started creating content, any of it, the most important thing is, what is our why? Why do developers and IT or CIOs, why do they care about Twilio? And where we landed on was this idea of being a builder, meaning that it's not just a matter of like anyone can be a builder. It's a mindset. It's not a job title. You could go out, whether you're building a team, building a company, building a new app, building anything. It's really about that ethos of, I may not be in the limelight. I might not be like the reckless, crazy, visionary, whatever, but I'm the one behind the scenes who's making it happen. I'm a doer. I'm going to go get it done and create something that's going to make an impact in this world. That's a very human story of like, you, Mike, you can make a difference if you go out and build something and just start building. Don't wait. Don't fear about the future. Don't worry about AI. Just build something, right? That's where we started. And then from there, now it makes a decision of like, how does our brand show up with design? How do we do photography? How do we do colors? How do we do fonts? How do we do stories and content? All that falls out of it. So I'd say number one, it's like going back to the old, USP. What do you stand for? What is your why? In an emotional way, not in a product way, not in a benefit way, not in a, the next Forrester report category way, in a very human way. Why? Why do you exist? And if you can answer that and truly get everyone to embrace it, that's what our customers believe. Yes, I want to be a builder. Sign me up. Analysts see this builder ethos and like, yeah, it's the company that's building stuff. Like, so you find that, and then everything else falls out of it.
That is perfect. That is a perfect place to leave it. You summed that up very, very well. So, Adam, thanks for joining us today on the next decision. I really appreciate the candid conversation, kind of the way that you think about and connect creativity and brand to demand and performance. And I think big takeaways for me really are that brand is a strength, and it's a strength that organizations sometimes either lose that muscle a little bit or forget that they have it, and it's a muscle that needs to be exercised, and it's a muscle that can really pay dividends. So, and thanks to everybody who joined us today and listened in to the next decision. Brought to you by the amazing people, the minds at Decision Council. And with that, we'll see you next time.
Huzzah, thanks for having me.